can I begin by saying that I'm very glad that the government has reversed its decision not to continue to fund free school meals through the long summer holiday, despite the amendment on the order paper, which I'm glad to see they're not now moving. You wouldn't have thought it was even there, listening to some of the interventions from those opposite, Mr Deputy Speaker. I believe it was the least that they could do. I'd also like to thank and congratulate Marcus Rashford, the talented young footballer who's spoken so powerfully about this from his own experience and who has repeatedly put his money where his mouth is, supporting Fair Share financially during the COVID crisis and writing to all members of the House to urge them to support reinstating free school meals over the summer. He has just won his first political campaign. I know how much football fans in my own city of Liverpool, through the efforts of fans supporting food banks, led inter alia by my honourable friend, the member for Liverpool West Derby, have done to support those facing hunger. They've been at the forefront of efforts to alleviate the spiralling increases in hunger and food poverty caused by austerity and the COVID crisis. They've been supported financially by players during the COVID crisis too, to make sure that they can continue to do the work that they do and be the bulwark against hunger that they are. I will.
I don't know whether she or the House are aware of the great activities of AFC Wimbledon, where the fans stand outside 22 stores a day and deliver 1,300 food parcels each week. A small team with an incredibly big heart.
They always have been that, Mr Deputy Speaker. Now, I wasn't aware of those numbers. I am now. Now, for many years, I've highlighted from the front bench when I was on it and from the back bench the ever-increasing food poverty crisis my constituents have been enduring, driven by savage cuts in public spending and support for families and by the nature of the job market, dominated by insecure work, low pay, short hours, 0 hours. That has been one of the drivers of increasing food poverty, but this has been made much worse by the COVID crisis.
Before she gets on to that, will my right honourable?
I'll have to. I thank my honourable and sororal twin for giving way. Will she agree with me that the state of the labour market, the precarious nature of much work, is one of the most shameful legacies of the party opposite? Well, I do agree with that analysis as it happens, but I would have to agree in any event in order to keep the peace in the family, even at a distance, Mr Deputy Speaker. But no, she is correct. Precariousness in the labour market, particularly underemployment, as it used to be called, 0 hours contracts being a prime example, is one of the main causes of financial instability that lead to the kind of food poverty that I've seen increasing in my constituency over the last 10 years to a remarkable degree. It's been made much worse by the COVID crisis, and children, of course, Mr Deputy Speaker, are the most innocent of victims of this. In the last 3 parliaments, I have repeatedly seen on the faces of ministers incomprehension when they just don't seem to accept that there's a real problem of real hunger out there, when I and others on this side of the House have pointed it out to them. But there is. It was real and growing before COVID. It is bigger and starker now. Free school meals are a direct way of tackling food poverty for children in normal times. But what if the schools are closed? What if the parents have their income removed whilst their bills remain or are at best deferred? That is what the COVID crisis has done. Mr Speaker, Mr Deputy Speaker, there are 18,000 children eligible for free school meals in Liverpool, currently over 3,500 in my own constituency. 29% of all children in my constituency are living in poverty. That's close to a third. And there are 2 other problems. The first is that things are getting worse. The second is that the capacity of the local authorities to assist has been systematically undermined and is diminishing rapidly because of government policies. Before the COVID crisis, unemployment in my constituency was at 4.5%. Today's figure show the claimant count has almost doubled in 2 months to 7.9% in my constituency, above the national average. However, there are a further 11,500 jobs furloughed, some 18% of the working age population in my constituency, and 2,600 taking up support from the Self-Employment Income Scheme, Support Scheme. Now, those schemes are valued and important, and I congratulate the government for instituting them. But many of these livelihoods are severely at risk over the next 2 to 3 months as the government schemes are brought to an end. Liverpool City Region research and other research into the job situation in the Merseyside area suggests that up to a quarter of all jobs are at risk as fallout from the economic consequences we're now suffering because of COVID. Mr Deputy Speaker, the reality is that unemployment in my constituency is likely soon to be even higher. Unemployment over 10%, a quarter of jobs at risk of going. That reminds me of something, Mr Deputy Speaker. It reminds me of the early 1980s in Liverpool. Truly the worst of times, and I remember them. I was there. Many of my constituents are now in desperate need, having found themselves unemployed, with bills still to pay and a financial reckoning heading straight towards them. In many areas, queues formed quickly outside retail outlets yesterday as non-essential shops began to reopen. But I'm told the longest queue that formed in Knowsley was outside a local pawnbroker's. There's been a 389% increase there in universal credit applications since before COVID, and as a universal credit has a passport benefit to free school meals, the need is obviously increasing hugely. Meanwhile, Liverpool City Council and Knowsley Borough Council are having their ability to respond and provide extra help removed by a government that has not even kept its own promise at the beginning of the crisis to pay them the full costs of COVID. Far from paying the two councils in my constituency what they've paid out, both have received only about half of the costs incurred, a recipe for removing their ability to further help children in need as the crisis of child hunger worsens. In Liverpool, the council was spending £180,000 a week funding a £10 voucher for children eligible for free school meals. It's a good job they did, because of the chaos engendered at the beginning of the government scheme, which meant government vouchers were not forthcoming for weeks. Last year, they spent £250,000 providing citywide play schemes that included food for the children using them across the city. It's not clear if they'll be able to do this in 2020 because of the financial shortfalls. In Knowsley, the council has spent £360,000 funding meal vouchers for children, which they will not be getting back from the government. Now, Mr Deputy Speaker, local councillors in both Knowsley and Liverpool have been using their discretionary funds and their volunteering time overwhelmingly during the lockdown to feed people, including children. This is all in addition to the food provided eventually by the government's shielding scheme. The Torrington Drive Community Association in Halewood have delivered over 2,000 meals and are currently delivering 120 meals 3 times a week, including 150 packed lunches for children. In Belvale, there's been 2,600 food packs given out at 3 distribution centres, with new families still coming in and asking for help. In Cressington, local councillors have spent £9,000, or all of their discretionary funds, simply feeding people, including children, who need support, with the help of Can Cook Kitchen, a food poverty charity whose work I have highlighted before. So yes, I am glad that the government have seen sense and have decided to give help that will feed children over the summer holidays directly to their parents in the form of vouchers. And the party opposite should not, as some of them were close to doing, equate poverty with fecklessness. It is wrong to do so. And I know that the Secretary of State will not fall down into that trap. It is wrong to do so. Now, the government need to step up to the challenge of making sure that the next few years in Liverpool is not a rerun of the early 1980s. They could start by giving Liverpool City Council and Knowsley Borough Council the full costs of COVID, as they promised that they would. In the longer term, the government must address the underlying causes of holiday hunger, child poverty, low wages and insecure work. And it's only when they do that that this problem will truly be solved.